running earlier.
Good evening, family. My name is Cornelius. They call me here. I'm one of the descendants of Eliza Oliver Gooseby. And first, I want to thank Rosanna for even inviting me to do this family history, because if anyone that knows me knows I love my family, and history is a hobby of mine, so I love doing stuff like this, and I really appreciate it. I did have a question. By a show of hands, how many people have actually seen Bruce? Anybody? What about 12 Years a Slave? Did anybody watch Underground?
Yeah.
Now, if you think about those type movies or those type shows, the main thing that people talk about or think about is slavery. But the other aspect of that is it talks about family and how circumstances cause families to draw closer together, whether it's good circumstances or bad circumstances. A lot of people say their friends are as close as family, but the one thing your friends will never have that your family have is a shared bloodline. They may be able to share experiences with you, but your family history is something only you and your blood relatives actually share with your ancestors. Some people ask, why do we talk about family history? Well, none of us are in this room today because without a sacrifice by somebody. Somebody sacrificed something at one point so that we could have liberties and freedoms today and sit and enjoy family. And it was never their intent for us to be separated. They developed family unions just for that purpose, to reunite them, to strengthen bonds for those that are already familiar with each other and know each other, and to create new bonds. And luckily, we can do both of those tonight with family members we already know and with the new family members that are present tonight. And I'm not going to take a whole lot of you guys this time, but I just wanted to express that first of all. And the presentation doesn't take that long, but there are a couple of things that I wanted to point out to you guys and go over, just to give you a brief, because you can't talk about this family history in one setting. And you can't condense it to a half an hour and cover everything and give it the justice that it actually needs. So I just wanted to cover a couple of things from the high level of the family, just to give you an idea of how deep this family goes. And if you look at the chart, and I did give you guys a handout so you can take it with you and you can follow along if you can't see this far up to the front. But if you're looking at our family tree, which is the first slide that we actually have, if you're looking at the left-hand side, under Miami Thomas and New Tolliver, this is common knowledge that most of us in the room have already had previously, and their parents. But as of the last reunion, or since the last reunion, we have been able to add to that whole right side of the family tree under Mary Tolliver and Frank Head. Because we did come to find out that Carolyn Tolliver has multiple children, also including Mary Head, who was married to Frank Head, which gives us the Frank Head, or the Head, that branch of the family. And luckily tonight, we're actually, as we build the reunion as Bailey, Gooseby, and Tolliver, we're actually lucky enough to have representatives from each of the branches of the family to include the Heads. The first person I wanted to touch on was Carolyn Head, because she was the matriarch of the family. And within this family, within this room, all of us that are blood related, we're related through one of two people, either Carolyn Tolliver Head or Miami Tolliver, one of those two people. That's our blood relationship or our blood tie in this room, one of the two, not necessarily both. But Carolyn Tolliver, it was born in 1828. And one of the things I wanted to point out, I did give you a couple of excerpts from a couple of census forms that me and a couple of family members were talking about before. She was born in 1828, but if you notice, let's look at the bottom one first from the 1900 census. This was actually the first clue that we had about the connection to the Head family. And I remember about 4 years ago, and I'm gonna call a few people by name, my cousin Tia was visiting me from Brooklyn. And I was new to Ancestry.com, and I was showing her how to do a couple of searches. And we searched by the name Alf Gooseby. And this 1900 census form pops up, and I had never seen it before. And Tia's very inquisitive. She said, well, who's Carolyn Head. I said, well, Tia, I don't know. I haven't seen the name before. Well, it says grandmother. Whose grandmother is she? And I'm like, well, Tia, if I don't know who she is, how can I tell you whose grandmother she is? So I get on the phone and I call out Betty. And Betty has been telling me, well, I remember being introduced to someone whose name was either Judge Head, or he was related to Judge Head. And that's what started the research on the Head side of the family. So then as we further research, then we back up to about 1880, we see the name Carolyn Head again in the household with Isaac. But then if you compare the two, you see in 1800 she has an Eliza listed in the house with her in 1880. That's her granddaughter, her first grandchild with Newt Tolliver. But Newt Tolliver and Miney were still living as slaves. So she was raising her granddaughter as her own in her house in 1880. But then if you jump forward to 1900, you see that last name, Carolyn, is now living in the house with her granddaughter, Eliza, and her husband. So I can think back just from my own personal experience. I know when I was growing up, I lived in Brooklyn until I was 12 years old with my grandmother's sister, Letty Gooseby Drake. And after I lived with her, I even lived with my Aunt Betty and Uncle Leon for a while. But the one thing I can say about both of them, one, Aunt Letty couldn't have loved me anymore if I was her own child. If she had, I had. When it comes to Aunt Betty and Uncle Leon, if her children had, I had. They didn't give one without giving everybody. And I know this was back in the 70s when I was living with them, but this is back in the 1800s going into 1900s. You see the exact same thing going on. So this family has always had a history going back into the 1800s of the family taking care of family. And that's the one thing I wanted to point out from these slides. Jake Thomas on the same spectrum when you're talking about Miney and Newt Tolliver. Jake Thomas was Miney Thomas's father. One of the things I wanted to point out, back in the 1800s, he was a major landowner in the Lakeland, which was then called Milltown area. And you can see, if you look at your handouts, at the time of this census, which was somewhere between 1883 and 1887, he had a total of 333 acres that he had under him. Now, I mean, this was back in the 1800s, so even today, that's a large number for any one person to have. But one of the things you'll also notice in this same slide, if you start reading down that list of names, you'll see names like Frank Head. Then a little bit further down, you'll see Newt Tolliver. You see Jake Thomas. You see all of these family members going to pay their taxes at the same time. So this family has always done stuff together. They traveled together. They hung out together. They worked together. They even went to pay their taxes. Newt Tolliver, which was who I'm descended from. The reason I included this slide, it was from 1870, and it still shows him in the household as the only black person living in the household of a white family. And this is around the same time because my great-grandmother was born around 1866. So that's how we know when my great-grandmother came along, he was still living as a slave, and so was mine, but they weren't even in the same household. And if you notice, I list the name of Newt Tolliver's children on this page, but I'm not going to talk about them until we actually get to the next slide, because I want you to notice the difference between these two. You'll see 8 children listed under Newt Tolliver's name here. But then if we look at Miney's name, you see 9 children listed. What's the new name on this list? Cornelius Bailey. If you look at this slide, now we can start talking about where the different branches of the family come in. We know Tolliver because Carolyn Tolliver was the mother of Newt Tolliver. So we know where that name came from. Newt and Miney Tolliver, their first child was Eliza. Eliza Tolliver married Al Gooseby. That's where the Gooseby branch of the family comes in. One of Miney's children was also named Cornelius. Well, I'm named after. It's not a great name, don't you? That's where we get the Bailey branch of the family. So the name did expand so that we can actually include every branch of the family, because every branch of the family is equally important. And we don't build one over the other. We're all family, and we all love each other. but I wanted to just include this one to show you. Specifically, if you're looking at the names listed, it shows New Tolliver's name, then it shows Miney. If you go over to the far right where it has that 12 and 8, the 12 annotates the number of total children that she had. 8 is the number of children that were still living at the time of this census. So yes, that does mean there's still a little bit more research that we need to do, because we know about 9 of Miney's children. Whether they were still born or died early or lived until adulthood and we just lost track of the names, that I don't know yet, but we know that she had a total of 12 children. And you have to excuse me, I know my voice is a little raspy, a little hoarse, but messing around with some people. Frank Head. Now, Frank Head was the patriarch of the Head side of the family, and I'm still doing a lot of research on him, and one of the main things I want to find out is, or to tie down, is whether or not Isaac Head, who was Carolyn Tolliver Head's husband, if that was Frank Head's father, because I'm not sure. I think it was, but I haven't found anything to actually say positively yes or no, whether he was or wasn't. But that's one of the things I still want to research. But I included this one because that same 1900 census form where we saw Eliza, Alf Gooseby, and Carolyn Head in the household together, if you look through that same stack of census forms and go 5 or 6 pages, you find Frank Head's name. And I take a lot of assumptions, and I'll put a story together whether I know the facts or not. It sounds true in my head. I'm like, okay, I can see Carolyn and Mama Eliza and Alf, and Mama Eliza saying, well, you might as well come and stay with me. Aunt Mary, you got a house full of children you raised, and your house is already full. It's just me, Alf, and Newt. So you might as well come live with me. That makes sense to me. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but that makes sense to me.
Okay.
But I wanted to include this one because it wasn't that far away from that other 1900 census form piece that I found Frank Head's family to include there. So that they had to have been at least within a couple of streets of each other living. So, but they were still close, because even when I think back, when I ordered a copy of New Tolliver's death certificate, I noticed that the person that gave the information for New Tolliver's passing and his family was actually Judge Head.
Wow.
And it wasn't until we actually saw this title, we started seeing the Head name pop up over and over again. I remember me and Aunt Betty were talking, and she was reading from Uncle Pete's obituary. And in the obituary, it listed a woman's name as doing a solo, and the woman's name was Ann Head Campbell. And I remember when Aunt Betty was reading it to me, she was like, it says solo by Ann, and she paused, and I'm like, okay, it's gotta be something. And she said, there's that name again. Here's the Head name again. I'm like, and I've got the same obituary, but I never even noticed that before. So it wasn't until we actually started seeing that connection that we were starting to connect the dots. And I still want to find out who Ann Head was, but it's such a common first name, it's hard, and I've seen a lot of Ann Heads, but this was in the New York area, so I'm hoping I can still figure out who she was. Well, Mary Tolliver Head is the exact same slide, but what I wanted to make sure that we pointed out was just like we talked about, Miney Tolliver had a total of 12 children. You can see that Mary Tolliver Head had a total of 13 children, 11 of which were still living at the time of the census. So I know there were 12 that we actually knew by name, so there was still one that we still need to find out whether or not it was somebody that passed away early in life or somebody that we actually missed. The family and history, one of the things I love to think, and of course I don't dwell on slavery, but you can't act like it didn't exist. And to me, I do like to draw an imaginary line, and if you think about when slavery actually ended, some people say 1863 with Lincoln, with the Emancipation Proclamation, that's fine, but some people say it's with the ratification of the amendment. So I just went with that date in 1865 with the 13th Amendment, but right after that, the first family member that was born outside of slavery, meaning after slavery ended, was Eliza Tolliver Gooseby under Newt and Miney Tolliver, and then under Frank and Mary Head, their firstborn child, Martha Head, was the first one under the Head branch of the family. One of the things I wanted to mention is, when you're talking about family history and generations, no, we don't dwell on slavery, but we do dwell on the passing from slavery into freedom, because it's an important part of our history. When we talk generationally, and we start passing this information down to the youth, one of the things, and to me, the biggest example for me is my brother Oliver. If I look at it from his point of view, he has a great-granddaughter named Taylor. She'll be 2 soon. Taylor has Dorothy, Shannon, Oliver, Carrie, Nora, Eliza, Miney, Carol. That's 8 generations of black folk. That's a lot for any family. So to be able to pass down to your descendants a legacy of 8 generations that she still has to be able to build on, going back into slavery in 1828, Carol and Tolliver Head. That's a great accomplishment. Another thing I wanted to mention was the name Willhead. Are any of you guys familiar with the name Mary Turner or the Mary Turner Project? Okay, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on, but there's a lot of information out there, but I can't put this in context without mentioning that whole scenario. The first name you see up here, it says 1918, the shooting of Hampton Smith. Hampton Smith was an honorary person. He was a hard person to work for. He didn't mind beating people who didn't do what he wanted him to do when he was paying them. So nobody really wanted to work for him. So to offset that, what he would do, he would go down to the jailhouse and bond people out and then have them work off their debt to him to make sure that he could get his work done. Well, now just like with a lot of youth today, they're only going to do so much. Now he got to the point where the one guy that he bonded out, his name was Sidney Johnson. When he bonded Sidney out, Sidney was about 19. I think Hampton was maybe in his early 30s. Sidney was sick and didn't complete all the work that the guy wanted him to complete. So he ended up beating Sidney Johnson, the black guy. Well, Sidney, what they tell me is Sidney shot and killed Hampton Smith. Now imagine, now we're still in the South. This all happened around the Valdosta area. So you're in the deep South, and you have a colored man that just shot and killed a white man. So now, as outraged as these people were, there was a lynch mob that formed. And they were determined to get anyone that had any connection to the death of Hampton Smith. The first person that was hung during that lynching process was Will Head, which was one of the sons of Frank and Mary Head. Now, the way that the name, and I know I mentioned Mary Turner earlier. The reason I mentioned her name was her lynching was one of the most gruesome in history. Now, before she was actually lynched, her husband, Hayes Turner, was lynched in connection with the death of Hampton Smith. When he was lynched, of course, this woman was outraged. Her husband's now gone, and she's 8 months pregnant. So she was determined to bring anyone to justice who had anything to do with her husband's death. Now, you just threatened a whole group of people that are already fired up about the death of Hampton Smith. So now they lynched her. Now, to give you an idea, and those of you that know the story, keep me honest, I'm just paraphrasing so you guys can get an idea. When they lynched her, they strung her, she's 8 months pregnant. They strung her up by her feet, doused her in gasoline and burned her clothes off, cut her stomach from her belly, and stomped her child to death at her feet.
Oh my God.
And then she was shot. Now there is a whole website dedicated to, and there is it's called the Mary Turner Project, and there's a lot of people that have just banded together to make sure that these type of injustices don't happen. And the reason, that's why I knew I couldn't talk about him without actually mentioning that whole lynching, because that gives you the perspective of why he was actually hung or lynched. And this slide, I know it doesn't say much, but I just wanted you guys to get an idea. We know that the family started around, well, in any census form that you see from back in the day, it's gonna say Milltown, Georgia. But Milltown is what Lakeland, Georgia used to be called. And I just wanted to give you an idea that these are the 3 original cities that I know of where the family originated. And to give you an idea of how far we've branched out so far. And
Good job.
and mind you, this isn't an all-inclusive list. I know everybody's city is not included on here, but this will give you a good idea of where we branched out to so far. So when you're doing your traveling, and I know we included a lot of names and addresses in the journals, so utilize your family. I mean, that's how family stays close. I mean, it's fine for you to move off and to go and enjoy your life, but we should always be able to come back together as a family and enjoy each other.
Good job. Woo-hoo.
And y'all know this is my favorite part. One of the things we always do is we recognize from each line of children. And one thing I noticed when I first got in contact with Randy and Sherry, even on their side of the family, just like under Newton, Miami, Toledo, we all track back to one of those 9 children, whether it's Eliza, Ed, Joe, Coley, Peter. If it's one of those, we all track back to one of those children. It's the exact same thing under Frank and Mary Head. They track back the same way, whether it's Ruby, Judge. So, and I was glad to see that. So, okay, so some things do, even though you don't even know each other, you're doing the exact same thing. So I was glad to see that. So what we normally do is we ask descendants from each present branch of the family to stand to be recognized. So we're going to do that at this time. First up, of course, for the descendants of Eliza Tolliver Bootsby, please stand. With the descendants of Cornelius Bailey, please stand.
Granddaughter here.
Okay, she must have gone to the bathroom, but she is here. I promise you she's here. I'm gonna get her later, right there. I'm gonna mess with her. Edward Tolliver. Joe Tolliver. Judge Head. Ruby Head Smith. Come on, get it right now.
Strong genes. Yep. Strong genes.
Just to give you guys an idea, I put together a to-do list, and this is just a couple of things that I have on my radar to be looking at just from a research perspective now. The first thing I had, like I mentioned earlier, the relationship between Isaac Head and Frank Head. I believe that Isaac Head was Frank Head's father, but I haven't been able to confirm that yet. And this is Cornelius Bailey's granddaughter. looked at the census forms that I showed you earlier, there are a lot of children that we still don't know by name. When you looked at Carolyn Tolliver, she had a total of 9 children. The only 2 that we knew by name were Newt Tolliver and Mary Tolliver, who married Frank Head. So there are still 7 other siblings out there that they had. And Denise, that's why I want to talk with you, because it may be one of those that we're trying to track down. The descendants of Annette Gooseby Boyd out of New York, that's one of the people that I'm still researching to find out where her descendants are, if any. I don't know. I know she had children, but I'm still trying to figure out where they are. So I'm still working on it. Descendants of Anna Tolliver Davis out of the Jacksonville area. Still working on her. I know 2 of her children, Mentor and Leonard, were in the Jacksonville area, but I'm still trying to trace down where they moved to from there. Siblings of Mymi Thomas. I know she had siblings, and the reason I say that is one of the things that we've spoken about through oral traditions is that when Mymi passed away, she left X number of acres to her descendants. But as you notice on the slide, Jake Thomas had over 333 acres. That leads me to believe that he had multiple children that he left patches of land to. So it's possible that Mymi actually had siblings. So I'm still working to make sure, or to find out whether or not she actually did. The last thing I have on here is descendants of Coley and Elizabeth Tolliver, who lived here in Philly. I know they had 2 daughters, and I remember one of you gave me an update on that, so I'm still doing research on her as well. But the only reason I put this up here is to let you guys know these are the things that I'm looking at from my perspective as far as the family and the history. But if you guys have anything that you need help with, or anything I can look up for you or help with, just let me know. I'll be glad to do it, because I love doing stuff like this. It's kind of like an unofficial hobby for me, so I like doing stuff like this. So just let me know if there's anything you need help on, or that we can actually work on together, or if anything we can add to this list. I'll be glad to help you.
Who needs Alex and Maria Neal?
Yes. You did an awesome job.